Hello everyone and welcome to Shure Tech Talk. So today, three guests joining me. I have Adeola from Lagos and Steve Davies and Iain from UK. And we are here to talk about our different experiences at the experience. That's arguably the biggest event, the biggest gospel event in the world. So, Adeola, do you want to introduce yourself? Your mic is muted.
I'm so sorry about that. Thank you everyone for joining in. My name is Adeola Akinyemi. I'm the Chief Operations Officer of Shure Limited, an audiovisual company in Nigeria. And we last year and years ago partnered with Shure to provide microphones and in-ear systems for, as Andrea said, the largest gospel event globally. If you ask me, I don't know if there's anyone larger. That's arguable. Yeah, but it was an amazing experience. So yeah, thank you very much. Over to you, Andrea.
Steve?
My name's Steve Davies. I own Soprantic Production Services, and I've been going for 27 years or so, showing my age, but we've been looking after the technical side of the experience alongside local technicians and teams the last 6 years, I think it is, since Experience 8, and we've just done 14, so you can do the maths. We take over teams to help look after and work with sound, lighting, with video, stage management, power and infrastructure, and we help the church sort of liaise with suppliers like Adeola, who and also yourself, Andrea, a couple of years ago, who very kindly come and help work with us on the event in order to make sure it's as good as it is.
And Iain, how it happened? Why you were there?
While I was there, yeah. Well, I'm actually good friends with the chap that does the lighting design. And he told me about the event, and I know they were looking for initially somebody to come on board and help with the patch side of things. And so I was coerced, maybe. I was persuaded to go along. Pretty much had no idea what I was getting involved in, other than the sheer scale of it was immense. Yeah, went along on patch and got to know the event and the people, which was phenomenal. And eventually ended up doing monitors for the last 2 years at the event. So yeah, it's awesome.
And he's been smashing it, I should say. Without him, the gig would be a complete disaster. I should also point out that the lighting guy that Iain refers to is a guy called Graham Roberts, who does lighting operation, but he also does design for the whole event, which is, I think, hopefully, if you've seen the pictures, you'll agree, it's been fairly impressive. When I coerced him to come and do this, I said to him, "Do you want to come and do this show in Lagos?" And it's only when we started applying for visas that he realised I meant Lagos, Nigeria, not Lagos in Portugal. But he's been coming up for, I think, one fewer year than I have, and he loves it there as well. We all do, the whole team do.
Okay, I think, Adeola, if we didn't lose you, you're still there. You are the best person to tell us more about the cultural importance and how it's perceived, this event in Nigeria.
Okay, so like you said, so the experience is organized by the House on the Rock Church. It's one of the largest churches in Lagos. The convener is Pastor Paul Adefarasi, and he's very passionate about music and the Christian community and just the global influence that music can have. So a number of years ago, I think this should be like maybe 16 years ago, they started the experience together local and gospel artists from all over the world. I mean, I guess I dare say that many of those artists have never even been to Africa until the experience, so on a platform, and then you have the whole Christian community and the whole of Lagos, Nigeria, come together to be a part of it. So I think it's something that everyone looks forward to. I remember the earlier edition. I was much younger. The earlier editions, we would go from school. People will come from campuses from all over Nigeria, Port Harcourt. Nigeria is not a very big country. You have to sometimes travel for hours to get to Lagos. Lagos is at one of the extreme ends of Nigeria. So you have people travel from all over the city. People come with their families. So from all over Nigeria to come to the experience. I even have friends who would say, oh, I'm coming to Nigeria early in December so that I can be a part of the experience. And you have thousands and thousands of people. You have to come early to get a seat-in. And then, it's just an interesting experience. If you look at people make friends, it's a large community. And so after the first year, many other churches, so it wasn't just a House on the Rock thing. Yes, they were the people who spread it, but many other churches started to support as well. So and it's so large that you have representation from even politics. You have governors, people, industry giants who will come, and everyone is looking forward to the experience. So it's the largest event, not just concert, literally the largest event in Nigeria of any kind, whether it's any kind, largest concert, largest any event in it, and everyone looks forward to it.
I have memory of it because the year I was there, I really recall it as a big thing for the whole city and most likely for the whole country. So before we go into some more details, I would love Marwan to show us a short video so we can really have our listener, we can give our listener a feeling of what the experience actually is.
Hi, my name's Steve. I'm here heading out the UK team that comes out to assist the local guys on the ground here in Lagos, working on the production side of things, so sound, lighting and the video, and we also help design the actual stage and the whole production, how it looks. Over the last 5 years we've used a variety of different radio mic systems, and it's been very interesting to see how the problems we've had with radio mics have increased year on year on year. We've had more people with 4G telephones and more people using wireless devices. A lot of the mics that we used here originally were channel 69, which one year in particular we had everything working fine until everyone turned up, at which point things stopped working fine. But as we do more and more work here, there's more and more equipment available in this country, the quality of that equipment grows.
Make sure you're putting somebody! Are you ready?
Previously we've been bringing in ULXD from the UK, working channel 38, which saves a lot of our problems. But this year Shure have been kind enough to let us use their Accent digital system, which has been amazing. It's taken something that has been one of the most complicated parts, radio mics and the in-ear monitors, and has just made it simple. We've not had to worry about it, everything has just worked, which means you've had all sorts of time to worry about other things that are a little more complicated. Very happy with how they've been set up, how it works. Again, bringing everything in on Dante so that our patching between different artists, again, gets so much easier to do all the patching by Dante rather than physical copper. Again, there is that physical copper backup and the AES backup should the Dante fail, but so far everything's been rock solid in what's actually an incredibly complicated Dante network with something like 17 or 18 different devices that we're patching to and from. Quality of the audio is, of course, you don't really talk about it. We've got KSM 9s, and so far everything's been sounding awesome. The stage is pumping out loud, and out front is nice and clear. So very happy with what Shure have let us use, and incredibly happy with the way they've supported us at this event. Very grateful for that system.
Some pictures, and we already cleared the part. Okay, Shure was nice, and we had a nice system, but really it's bringing back some memories, and it's been even for me, despite some I'm not very young in the industry, but it's been one of the biggest events and one of the strangest events. Now, if I have to describe the working situation in Nigeria, what comes to my mind are the delay towers. We had a perfect PA system, top-notch technology, but what was holding the PA system, the tower, was not what we would see maybe in Middle East or in Europe. So my impression is that there is technology, there is people with knowledge, but the infrastructure behind it is not always at the same level. Do you agree, Steve, or do you have a different impression?
So I think you make a very interesting point there. The first year I came to the experience, again, I said about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, was I saw the exact same thing. I saw those towers and thought, oh blimey, that's not okay. Largely because it's not how we do it, as you say. So I got in touch with a friend who sells and rents scaffolding towers, and sent him pictures of the structure. And although it looks a little bit improvised, it's not. It's actually it's a scaffolding system that is used not so much in our event industry, but in the scaffolding industry, it's very common. So although it's not going to be something like that, may not be accepted in Europe, the actual tolerances and weights, etc., that are being used are well defined, and therefore it does actually do the job properly. Now, you might question about the diagonals going across the front of it and how that might affect the sound coming out, and yeah, that's a fair point. But when we started doing this, that really was the least of our problems. So I think it's sort of coming round, to the point that you're trying to make. The infrastructure behind things is lagging behind the quality of equipment, if you see what I mean, and the expertise comes with it. So, for example, power over the last few years has become a lot more organised, a lot more. The quality of what we've been getting in terms of generators and distro and cabling has been so much better, and likewise the quality of knowledge and experience of the guys who are putting it in has become so much better. And it might be that something like PA towers is something we look at in future years, but at the moment we're just grateful to have all the the improvements in equipment and experience that we've had so far.
Of course, and it was another memory that is impressive for me is we had an amazing amount of people moving in and out, and it was totally under control and totally in a different way of what we would expect, but it was very smooth. But then at the end, the traffic was crazy as for every event in the world ever, so that was making me feel very much at home.
I think that's something that we've come and imparted a lot of our knowledge onto the guys and girls working on it. But at the same time, I feel that I've learned things from it as well. So we look at it and assume because we do things a certain way, that's the right way to do them. And seeing how things have been improvised or organised or done differently out in Lagos has actually opened my eyes to a few things as well. So I feel quite privileged to have been in that situation. Ian's nodding because he can probably think of more examples of that than I can.
Absolutely, and I mean, it was I think that the overall quality of the event, from an artistic side and even from a production side, was giving the impression of what it is, a world-class event, managed, as I said, probably with some differences, but not in the end. The overall quality of event is amazing. And as Adeola mentioned, we have artists coming in from all over the world year after year, and some of them really sold millions of records, and their expectations, I mean, have been matching. The overall experience there for an artist, I think, has no difference with anything else. What I noticed, as I said, it's a different way to get to the same point. That makes sense. Now, we already saw some of the technical. We already heard about some technical details in the video, but maybe you can explain a little more in details how the technical side, especially the audio side, is organized in the background.
Do you mean in terms of equipment and connections, or in terms of the processes that we go through?
Oh, both. Whatever you think is more relevant, you can start with that.
But if I start with processes, and then I'll hand over to Iain, if that's okay, to talk about sort of Dante networks and the like. For any sort of production manager or anyone looking at a gig, there are two ends to look at. There's the how does it need to sound, what and what have the bands asked for in their riders. So again, in the first year, I'd got very few riders. We didn't really know what we were walking into, and that caused me a little bit of concern. But over the years, that situation's not really changed much. But I don't think we've had anyone come out from, especially from the American artists who are sometimes a lot more fussy, and say, this isn't good enough, I can't have this. They tend to walk in, see our team and see the guys who are working on it and go, we know we're going to be in good hands here, we know it's going to go well. And I don't think there have been any artists that have actually had a bad set as a result of that. So the usual processes that we would go through to make sure we get those two parts connected in the UK or in Europe, just thrown out the window. It's dealt with very differently, but it is dealt with, and it works. And we essentially allow for every eventuality that we're likely to expect, especially in a gospel situation. We had one year when a guy turned up with a string section that was not announced, and they had no mics or pickups of their own, and obviously we didn't have anything specific for it. But again, we have things in place to deal with these situations when they arise. And we dealt with it, and the gig happened, and it went well. It was just a bit of a, what's the word? Just a bit of a hassle, bit of a fuss when we first found him for sound check. And rather than turning up with his usual band, he's turned up with his string section. But we got there and we fixed it, and it went well. But in terms of actual equipment, I'll pass you over to Iain to give you the nitty gritty on that, I think.
No worries. I mean, I think, as Steve says, like, we're walking into a situation where there are probably more unknowns than you would expect for a show of this size. Like, if you were, I mean, I'm quite a meticulous person. I like things to be planned. I like to know what's going on. Getting riders, festival patch, that sort of thing. I mean, that's something you'd all expect to have dealt with, at least several days in advance of a festival or an artist turning up. But you've got to approach it differently. And that was one of the things that I think I learned very quickly. You've got to be adaptable. You've got to have a system in place that will be flexible enough. And that actually is one of the challenges, because the core equipment, as we've said, is there. We use Yamaha CL series consoles with Rios. The sort of gear that you would expect to have access to. But then when you start drilling down into what's actually available, it might be a surprise to find out that actually the Dante network, the backbone of the network, is unmanaged switches. Now, you could look, I mean, I'll see if I might have a photo here actually, which if I share my screen, which might be a little bit of a surprise in terms of the actual network. If I share this, it might not do it straight away. We'll give it a go. That might not work. We'll see. Well, the actual network is a pair. The basic pair of it is a pair of Netgear switches that do the backbone of the network, which is a little bit surprising, really, but it works. And so, when we first went out there, we had to take a load of network cable with us because, building a multi-core, that they didn't have a Cat5 multi, for instance. So there was no fiber to do, a main network between front of house and monitors. So it is built on what is actually quite a basic system. So we've got switches at front of house, as you'd expect, switches at monitor world, and switches in the broadcast room, and it's all managed off that. It can be a little daunting when you look at the actual setup that's there. And this looks like this might actually work. If we go to this, are you able to see that picture there?
Yep.
Yeah, so that is the actual pair of network switches that run the main network. And we have had some challenges with this. We have had some random instances where there was some stray voltages kicking around, as I think Steve will probably remember. You may see a bit of small sort of charring there on the network switch. Things like, as Steve was saying, power has improved massively over the years. But the entire backbone of the network is that. And you just have to run with it and go with it and trust it and be confident that once it's up and running, it's going to be there. The rest of the stage setup is, as Steve says, the equipment's there. It's quite a large monitor system. There's 16 wedge mixes on stage, plus up to 8 or 10 ways of ears. But again, you have to be a bit inventive with it, because there's, multi-pins, not really a thing. Lots of pieces of XLR, building your own looms, taking what you have, adapting, and then kind of going on, really. And that's how it kind of has to work.
And I think adapting is one of the best characteristics of every audio technician in the world. I will keep it on the side because I'll come back to this topic later on. You mentioned there was a Dante network, and that was connecting broadcast, front of house, and monitor world. How was the broadcast? How was managed? It was how it was dealt with.
Yeah. So we have a set of Rios on stage, which is actually because of availability of equipment. So monitors and broadcast mix share the same set of Rios. So we have 64 ways of Rios, 64 mic inputs at stage, which feed both monitors and broadcast. We run the full split over Dante down to it's an awesome little room, actually. They basically turned a shipping container, into a little broadcast room. It was quite plush, actually. Air conditioning, it had nice carpet on the floor. It was a good place to go and chill out. And then in that room was one of the CLs, and usual sort of stuff, Genelecs, laptops for recording, and the broadcast mix was from there. And then we also brought the broadcast trucks into the Dante network as well, because one of the other things that we found was, because there was a lack of multi-pins running all over the place, getting things like ambient mics in. Obviously, for an event of that size, it's also going out online, and the chap that was doing the broadcast mix rightly wanted plenty of ambience. It's essential to bring the mix together and give people a feel of the event. So we brought other devices onto the network from the broadcast truck. They were very kind enough to loan us another Rio that we stuck out at front of house just for getting some extra physical lines in. So you've got this what I suppose it's, the thing that's a little bit daunting is when you sat looking at Dante controller, and then that a Dante feed's gone out to the broadcast truck, but then mysteriously other things start appearing on the network that you have no idea about. And before you know it, the Dante network, it's like, okay, I've actually no idea where some of this is going now. It's just been kind of piggybacked. So yeah, it's also quite one of the things we did discover that was a little interesting at one point was obviously the broadcast truck tends to use an external word clock. Now, if you lose that word clock, you have a little bit of an issue on your Dante network when that little external sync to external box is ticked. So, the Dante network did get quite big in the end, and for a network that is just run on unmanaged switches. I mean, yes, it wasn't a mixed sort of traffic network, but still, you kind of sit there and you just think, wow, there's a lot hinging on this network.
I think the Dante solution was absolutely the best one for the situation, because you don't need the specific equipment. Every single piece and bit can be easily replaced with devices that are coming off a shelf. And for the amount of channels that we were handling, it was absolutely capable of handling it without specific stress and I think that was coming quite nicely, except for the power thing that you displayed. That was weird, I remember. Other than that, I think that all these challenges are kind of small compared to the major challenges that presented the experience to me. That was the event itself, because what may not be clear at this point is that the event, I remember, like the morning before we started, I had until that point I have been thinking, about the RF, about the spectrum conditions and what's not, the flow of the different mics and everything. And then the timetable came, and we had, I think, 40 plus acts over 12 hours. That was really challenging because it's from 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. And that was really a special thing. I mean, I've been managing festivals, I've been doing things, but 12 hours live continuously with broadcast and 600,000 people in front of you, that was the first time for me. So that was really something to deal with.
It doesn't.
Yeah, I think.
No,
I think mentally that's one of the big challenges. Is you're stood there on the show day itself. You've got to remember we get there. However much we wish we could turn up maybe a bit later, given the length of the show. We've got internationals to sound check on the day, so some of those guys fly in, and we do that sound check from sort of late morning, and then invariably somebody else needs to slot something in. So by the time you know it, you've hit showtime at 7 p.m. and you've got 12 hours left to go, and you've already been going. And mentally, this is the time when you really need to be switched on. And it's how on earth you keep going. And even if you can find like a few, I mean, thankfully, the guys who are from House on the Rock Church, I mean, shout out to, from my point of view, Ebenezer, who works engineering for the local acts, the Nigerian acts. If it wasn't for Ebenezer being there, I mean, we work very closely together. And so I tend to look after the sort of international artists and babysit the monitor system. But how on earth you could, like, without the team out there as well, sustaining yourself through that length of event would be a bit impossible.
I have to chirp in here and say the same. Lots of praise for and my opposite number is a guy called Charles Duke, who, if he's listening to this, will probably be now cheering because I mentioned his name. And we have a great relationship. We take the mick out of each other constantly, but he looks after the local acts and I look after the international acts. And I think for one person to sit at front of house and do the whole thing, not just for the show, it's just not going to happen because it is a long show. And as Iain says, we have the international acts sound check on the morning of the event. But what we haven't said is the day before the event, we spend the whole day sound checking all of the local acts. And although that's Ebenezer and Charles on the consoles, we're still sort of overall responsible to make sure they get what they need to do the acts that they're looking after. So that's, the day before the show day, which then of course runs into a third day. And none of that accounts for the extra days we spend before building the stage, putting the equipment on it, getting everything plugged in, problem solving, and all of which done in heat and humidity, which it's quite difficult. Certainly, it's not what we're used to working in the UK, but it's an incredibly difficult week, but incredibly rewarding. First, because the show, we're also passionate about the event, but also House on the Rock, who look after us very well. They make sure that the environment that we come back to, the hotel we're in when we finish a day, is a place where we can actually relax properly, get decent food, and the way they look after us has been phenomenal. I think if they didn't do that, then we probably wouldn't have managed to keep Iain on the job for so long, certainly. But just there's some pictures of him which I shan't share, but they are, I think, perhaps the most exhausted I've ever seen a human being looking whilst still working. And that defines what happens a lot with a team, but just Iain's a lot more photogenic with it. So that's what he is.
Even during the video, that was pretty clear. I was lucky enough. I remember I had Adeola at some point in the middle of the night coming and bringing some food in our bay where we were dealing with the mics, and that was amazing. And it's like, oh yes, I really need food. I forgot about it, but I really need food. And probably it was 2 or 3 a.m. in the But yeah. We've been talking about our experience in the past, but now I just want to take you into the future. First of all, does anyone know if there is going to be the next year, the experience? Has it been confirmed? Has it been postponed? It's still on hold? Do we know anything about it?
So I spoke to the church, I think a couple of months ago, just when all this started. Because we've got some equipment that we're trying to get out to Lagos at the moment for them. And the intention then was very definitely that it would happen, but no one knows what's going on. And I think also, I don't think the situation is being managed in Nigeria the way that we've seen it managed over here. Just speaking to some of my friends over there, they seem to be getting very little help from the government and so on and so forth. So I don't know is the answer. I very much hope so. It's the start of December, so I think if things carry on the way they are here, then and that's the way it is working down in Nigeria, then it's very, very positive. But there's also a lot of planning that needs to be done beforehand. So I'm kind of scared to make the phone call in case the answer's a no, because it's kind of the highlight of my year. But I would imagine I'll probably make that call over the next couple of days, but fingers crossed.
I think that we don't know in this time is in terms of event industry is the most common answer to any question, because we really don't know. And about that, Adeola, how is the situation right now in Lagos? I think the line is not very good, or you're muted.
Muted.
We're no, I'm not muted.
No, you're on. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Absolutely.
Okay, so well, we're partially locked down. So what that means is businesses are open, but not completely. So people are still working from home, but all churches, large gatherings, church events are still locked down. There's an announcement that churches will resume next week, but I don't think they would allow large gatherings. So, well, we don't know. Fingers crossed in December, we don't know if the experience will still happen. We'll miss it. We do hope it can happen because everyone looks forward to it. But for now, in the last 4 months, there hasn't been any large gatherings. So it's done online now.
Okay, the last question to each one of you is about the virtualization of the event. Initially, when the crisis happened, we all have been looking into virtual events and this kind of possibility to keep the information and the communication flowing. But Steve, starting from you, do you see this as a trend in the future, or it's more something that can only temporarily replace the real thing, but it's going to fade out as soon as the situation goes back to normal, or we'll be learning something from that and we will be using it even when the situation will go back to normal? How do you see it?
I think the latter, as you described it there, is probably more appropriate. I mean, nothing's going to fully replace gigs or church services, and I've been watching House on the Rock on Sundays when they are broadcasting live from Nigeria. But what's quite interesting is that House on the Rock in London are also using the stream from Nigeria to represent what's happening here. So I think the whole Zoom conferencing or Blue Jeans, whatever we're on, is going to revolutionize what is possible, but it's not going to replace it. So we've had all sorts of we've got a setup in a studio not too far away from here that we filmed a rock and roll cooking show in last week, where they had the chef from Metallica tell some stories about what it's like to work with Metallica whilst cooking ribs. I think it was the singer's favorite dish. So I think it's opened our eyes to all sorts of new possibilities and ways that we could perhaps improve what we deliver to people, but I don't think anything's really going to replace the excitement of a show. It's just not the same thing. And like, it's not the same as being at a church service, watching it online. The spectacle that it is, and being surrounded by that many people all enjoying the same experience. I think it's an addition rather than a replacement.
Adeola, I see you're agreeing with what Steve said.
Of course, we're going to take some learnings from it. We're going to change delivery. We're going to have access to more people. So before, if you're not at a show, you can't enjoy the show. So we're going to. I see in the future how people can actually monetize engagements online. If you can't come for a concert, but the concert organizers can still get some money from people who watch online. So that will happen, but nothing.
I lost you, Adeola.
So where did you lose me? And as I said, I agree with Stephen. I agree with Stephen. So I think that there are lots of things to learn from this experience. It's expanding how people will engage and how many people you can reach. A lot more people now can be reached online. It's a global village. But I don't think anything will ever replace the experience of being at a show. I mean, the crowd, the energy, the new friends that you make. I mean, it's just not the same watching online. So for gigs and for concerts, I do hope that the world doesn't go. The reason why you want to attend a concert is you want to get out of your house, go out with some friends, have a good time, enjoy the live music. So nothing will replace gigs. I don't think so. But we will learn from it and we'll be able to do it better.
Iain, after this period, what as a technician, what are you gonna take with you? We already discussed about webinars, so maybe you wanna mention them, or how the technical job is gonna change after that? How do you see it?
Well, I think at the moment there's a lot of challenges to be faced, even with the streaming side of things, because there are people who are susceptible at the moment to this particular pandemic and therefore need to be handled in a different way. So some of the stuff that I've been looking at has been so heavily risk assessment focused and health and safety focused. If you've got somebody who's maybe immunosuppressed or something, that the whole event environment has to be adapted and changed. You have to throw out old ways of working, and I think that's one of the things. It comes back to that whole thing of being adaptable, not being too rigid in your thinking, being able to problem solve, and taking what information you can get or what experiences you can learn from, and adapting the way you work to work with either whether it's a different environment, a new artist, a new event, a new client. You know, that's one of the big things. But I don't think, like the other guys have said, you know, we are like, as humans, we want a sense of community, and however much you sit down and you watch something online, it's just not the same. It's not the same as being out there with your friends, working alongside a huge group of technicians. You know, it's just not the same. And I think to replace that with something else, you know, to replace the experience of going to a live event, you know, the sights, the sounds, the smells. I know that's maybe a bit cliched, but you know, I don't think we can ever move away from that. And I can't wait till we can find a way to work back in that environment safely without putting people at risk.
Agree with you. Probably this is the last question that I have, because I'm not particularly religious, to be honest, but I've always felt a strong fascination about the gospel world and that kind of spiritual music that really hits me hard. And I think, Steve, you have quite a lot of experience with it. So do you wanna tell us more about how this type? And I think this is one of the most non-replaceable things. Despite it's beautiful to hear the gospel record live, it's completely something else. That's valid for rock and roll as well, but it's specifically valid for gospel for what is my experience. So, having an assumption that we need it back, do you want to tell us about how do we work to completely transfer the sensation from the stage to the audience in a gospel event? What's different than the other type of events that we have been handling?
That's a good question. Essentially, we handle it as a show. It's a show in terms of how we do the audio, how we do the lighting, we do the design, and we do the video. But you do you tweak certain things. So, for example, where you might have all sorts of special effects, for example, on a live rock and roll show, well, I mean, that's not necessarily appropriate. So what we try to do is give the artists as big a platform as possible in order to get their message across to the guests at the concert as efficiently and as well as they can. And the best thing we can do in order to allow them to do that is to make sure the quality of the equipment that we have is good. The quality of the people we have using that equipment is good, that it's put together properly and it's designed well for that space. And that's something that has really inspired all sorts of improvements year on year. So we now have originally when I started doing it, the stage was, well, it was big, but for that space it was quite small. Whereas now we've gone through a few different stage iterations and now we have a huge stage, about 30 meters wide, which just about looks right for the space that we're in. So that then comes with more LED wall, and it comes with, you know, a different design of this, that, and the other, all of which we have to get right to make sure that we can keep the standard of what we're doing up high. So nothing there is, I guess, specific to gospel. It's more just to do with the professional delivery of a show. But I don't know, there's ways you tune that the PA system is different. So there's a lot of vocals going on. So we have to be very careful with the high mids. But it's still, at the end of the day, it's a show. It's a big show, and we just do the best with it that we can, which is exactly what we do, no matter what the genre is.
Yeah, what I think it was, what I noticed as I've been a guest of your team, it was that the environment on stage was really welcoming for everyone. We have been sweating. The situation was somehow it was hot, long hours of work. But the overall delivery and the overall sensation on stage was, okay, you're welcome. Whatever just happened with the power network, it doesn't really matter. We are here to have you and expressing yourself in the best possible way. And that was valid for everyone. I didn't notice any difference between the most popular artist and the more entry-level beginner or whatever local artists around. So that was for me a very important added value.
I think what you say about positivity there is a good point as well. I think no matter the event, it's essential that your team remain positive. And when people come to join us, like yourself, often you can find people can be a little cold to you, and we won't tolerate that. That's not the sort of team that we put together. That's not how the Nigerians work either. So, when you came to join us, I would hope you felt as welcome as you were. And we feel the same when they have traveling engineers, or whether they have different people involved doing different bits and pieces. They're always welcome. Even when someone turns up and lands a level of work and pressure on you that you weren't really expecting, they're always welcome because it's part of the show, and that's what we do.
Okay, guys, it was great to have you. Of course, I wish this situation goes somehow away and we are allowed to travel and to have events again as soon as possible. Thank you very much for your time, for the time you spent at this Shure Tech Talk, and hope to see all of you in December or maybe earlier.
You'd be very welcome.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
See you later.
And bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.